Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, the first item on the agenda is the WQI forms and grant changes. So Meg's going to recuse herself. We'll address the dollar amounts first, just to make sure everybody is on board with it. So the highlights for those dollar changes, and then I'll go through the broader changes. If you go to page 2 of 7, so it's like
Yep.
a little bit further back, like.
About 5 or 6 pages then.
Yeah. So the changes there was B2, the maximum base grant is going from 6,000 to 12,000. And then the pressurized shallow drain field grant, we're going to increase that to 5,000. It was currently at 1,000 or 2,000? 2,000. Yeah. And then the mandated private well relocation, 4,000. We didn't have, I don't think we had anything. No, and we've taken away the income incentive. There weren't that many people taking advantage of it, and I think these two being increased plus the grant covers any extra funds that would be needed by someone who's struggling a little bit to try and make this all work financially. So are we good with that piece so that we can proceed
That we are.
with the document?
Very much, yeah.
So Christina, if you could let Meg, she can come back in. And the reason she recused herself for the record is just because her family business policies, so
She stands to benefit.
yes.
And there are copies available if you want to see.
All right, so getting back to the main part of the changes, which Stephen said they're in the back of the room, they're also on the website. All of the changes that we discussed at the last work session, this topic was on, have been incorporated. So I just wanted to go through if there was like anything that anyone felt needed to be added or changed. I only found one. I have a few commas, and I'll give those to Coco later to just incorporate it, just mostly like a few commas here or there or spacing. But in the first page for flowchart and process summary, do your homework #1. I tripped over when I was reading it, design engineer letter. And to me, I was like, you have to design an engineer letter? Like that's the action to take is to design something. So I want to change that to engage design professional. Because you can have an architect or an engineer. So you really just, you need to engage a design professional. Sounds good. So just
It's a good change.
flipping through the rest of the document, the big changes is we've, tried to streamline this, make it easier, spell things out. We are we're making it the process easier for the WQI advisory board to consider special conditions that might have caused someone to not consider applying. Now they can consider applying, and the WQI advisory board can work with them.
So those special conditions include well locations and things of that nature, things that might, additional cost to them that they may incur as a result of having to put in an IA system.
Yeah. And the only other question that was brought up, so if we're good with all of these, and I didn't have any markups on any other pages, was just whether or not we do a look back for grants that were awarded when it was 6,000, because we started at 15,000, and then pre-COVID, when we were concerned that we weren't going to have the funds to put in as many of these as we, give away as many rebates as possible, we lowered it to 6,000, and the cost of those systems at the time was lower. Like we were getting systems in for like 26,000, 22,000.
Correct.
Now the average cost is up to like 33,000. So there was discussion, do we retroactively go back and people who could have used, you know, the extra money, do we want to go back and look at those? I have thoughts, but I don't know if someone else wants to speak first. I should probably go outside. Sorry. I forgot about that part.
I mean,
Mixed emotions.
yeah, I go, life happens.
Yeah.
You know, I went through with it, and while I was doing it, in the process of it, all that tax thing happened. So all of a sudden, something that was gonna cost me nothing cost me taxes. And at the time, I thought, well, I'm still getting a brand new system for a few $1,000s. I just thought, I still felt blessed. I mean, I still felt fine. I mean, I'm not sure I agree with this. I think that, you know, even if it cost you a little bit more than you thought and our grant didn't quite cover it, you got a nice a boost, and so did the environment. You know, I mean,
And I don't differ from that point of view. I also think that money is it's not an endless pot of money. And if we are trying to accelerate and encourage people for the future and get, you know, we have a little over 200 in the ground now, but we surely want to get 400, 500, 600 within the next couple of years too.
Mhm.
So money needs to be available for this. The prices are going up of what we're awarding. So I think, you know, you need that money,
Yeah.
you know, to be able to support that major effort going forward.
Yeah, I had done an analysis on the spreadsheet that I have going for all of the individual ones. So there were some grants in this period where between the county and the state grant and then the local grant rebate, there was still money left on the table. So like not quite $6,000 not utilized, or the 8,000, whatever they were allowed. But of the ones that I could see that there were extra costs submitted, it was about 45,000. But I started to think about those who were right near the threshold, that they may have stopped submitting their costs to be, because it was like, oh, I've got what I need to get the full 6,000. So if we reopen it, then we may have people coming back in and saying, oh, I didn't give you this cost and I didn't give you this cost. And I think that would just make it a more onerous process to try and figure out.
trying to figure out, and to Jim's point, more of a drain on the
Yes.
fund for systems that are already in,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Okay, so I think we're in agreement then.
I think we're okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I think we fought real hard also for the, you know, the town did, as all East End towns did do at the time, fighting the push on the taxation of the grant. And we were able to turn that around for people to be able to reimburse them there. I think that was a commendable thing, and I think it was the right thing to do, and hopefully people took advantage of that.
No, I filed them in returns.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there were two, I think, that were granted that were 3 years, beyond the 3-year amending return. And I think Congressman Lalota's office is working with at least one of the homeowners, so that they can
Nice, very nice.
do something to amend that year.
Great.
Greg, you came from the committee. Is there anything you wanted to add? It sounds like we're ready to move forward and adopt.
I have no comments.
Okay, all right, good. Okay.
Great.
Oh, Coco?
I just want to, I don't like to talk, but.
Oh, no, we know that to be
I'm
different.
Lee Newman. I have been the WQI clerk for the last 15 months. Catherine Ryan has taken the torch. There were a couple of people that applied this last month, and they were wondering, would they still get the 12,000?
I would like to include them in the new,
Yeah.
what about you?
Okay, I just want to make sure.
I would be in favor
Okay.
of that.
Cutoff would be if you've been paid.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to clarify.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, that's a good question.
That-
Yeah,
that
I
is
agree with that.
A good point of view.
Yes, okay.
You said the people that have been paid?
Yeah.
So if you've closed out your rebate,
Okay, so the closed rebate,
Yeah.
we don't touch. Open rebates, we would be able to go back and
Yes.
say, okay.
Anything that has not been paid by the
There's
town.
not many, but.
Yeah, there aren't many.
There's a couple.
yes.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, hopefully the extra funding will cause more people to
yeah.
start to come forward again. Okay,
Right.
all right, so we're done with that topic. Okay, so again, we can invite Meg back in.
All right.
Thank you, Chris.
We'll wait for her.
No. Our next agenda item is water conservation measures. This was something, Jim, that you put on the table
Yeah.
for discussion.
All right, just let Megs get back in her seat here. So there's no doubt that water resources are the number one issue here on Shelter Island. They have been for probably decades. They are today, and they will be for decades to follow. So anything that we can do to preserve water quality and water quantity and conserve our water supply is important. We have taken measures as a town board in the last few years to try to pass several things that help in terms of water conservation. One of the big things that you have to thank the WAC for their work several years ago when they came up with the drought restrictions. And we finally were able to get that up and running. And I think it's a great thing. I support the signage, around the, I love it. I think the number one way we can, other than this, is getting those signs in key locations. And I'm not talking about 50 of them, but I'm talking about a dozen or so in strategic spots around the island for awareness, education, and reinforcement about water conservation. And I think you see it every day. Every day I make that left-hand turn to go down to Silver Beach, that sign is right in front of me, it's guarded, and I see that, it's visible to me. And I think about that when I go home. So I think that's a good thing. I think we're heading in the right direction. I think there are some other things, and I have Joe Fenora, our town engineer, who's also on the Zoom here today, to be able to take an additional 11 steps, not take additional 11 steps. Let me back up and say there are 11 other possible steps that the town board, whether this town board or future town boards, can take in terms of trying to conserve that resource. So what I've tried to do is we're going to go through 1 through 11. We ranked order them. Number one, a rank order of 1 is a highly recommended, easy to implement suggestion. So that's something that's almost, I don't want to say a no-brainer because the term's overused, but it is kind of a no-brainer, something that is easy to implement that we all support. Number 2 is something that's recommended, but probably needs a little further discussion and research on how best to do it, because obviously for everything that you put in place, it has to be enforceable. So there is no point of the town board just coming out with legislation and passing stuff that is not being enforced. So I think when we have to think of these things, we have to think of the enforcement piece as well. And number 3 is something that's just not recommended at this time. It's just not the way we want to go. So without any further ado, we're going to just take them. They're in no particular order, by the way, and I just list them here. Number 1 is the use of WaterSense certified appliances and fixtures. And on the bottom, and when I wrote down there, I said New York State Plumbing Code 2020 has adopted EPA WaterSense standards for residential plumbing. And I would like to say that we're targeting all new homes and those that are going through major renovations, especially of kitchen areas, or shower, bathroom, those kinds of things that we would start to target. We would obviously not be targeting every house on Shelter Island because it would just be overwhelming. But when people are building new homes or making major renovations in their home, I would like to think about this. And in the bottom, it talked about WaterSense certified sprinklers on all, it shouldn't have said no, existing irrigation systems, not new irrigation systems, existing. So those are two things that I think, I personally, Jerry I have his comments in front of me as well. And he kind of supports this, but he questioned this new irrigation. There is no such thing as new irrigation systems. We're looking at existing.
Can I ask a question
Yes.
about the New York State Plumbing Code? I thought if the plumbing code New York State Plumbing Code has that in it, we have to.
Right.
We couldn't be weaker. We could be stronger, but that code is already something that our building department should be
I was going to
enforcing.
say, yeah.
It's a good point.
Like,
I
do we need
think.
to do anything further that's already in the
Yeah.
zoning code?
Joe, your comments on number 1, BJ's point about it, it's already in New York State Plumbing Code as of 2020.
I think that's a great question for Reed. They would be, most seasoned in what they're seeing, and can probably talk more thoroughly about what exceptions, if any, there are for these particular types of code implementations.
All
Can I
right.
just interrupt just for a second? It's very hard to follow this conversation, not having access to the document that you're talking about.
Oh, okay. You want to put it up?
Okay,
Was that posted up?
yes. All right, that's a very good point. We'll put it up in just a second.
Christina, do you need a minute to get it up there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Why
well,
don't we just set this aside for the moment? We do have Tim Pertel here.
Skip to green options.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's go to the green options
Okay.
mini grant. So just as someone else can pull it up, maybe share
Yeah.
the latest proposal. So Sylvester Manor and Green Options have been working together, unless Tim, you might do a better job of explaining this than I, have been working together to request money from Green Options, who had received a grant of $5,000 a number of years ago and still has $4,700 of this grant money in their coffers. And so want to use them to increase our recycling composting efforts. So originally, the grant was included, yes, it originally included some bins and things that were going to be used specifically for Sylvester Manor CSA members. So a restricted group, and then also use at Quinnipiac. So because we have to make it open to the whole public. So we're going to look to sponsor buckets that would be available people could just pick up for free at the farmer's market. The latest proposal is 100 labels and 100 green buckets. So the total is $1,145. And that would come out of Green Options grant funds.
And could you give it the breakdown on one more time?
100 buckets, 100 labels that describe
Do's and don'ts.
yes, how to properly compost.
Labels.
Does anybody know, would the compost be available to the public then? Come on up.
You come to the mic.
Come on up.
Come to the mic.
And the-
Yeah, you have to come to the mic.
Say who you are.
State your name.
Hello, I'm Ariel Gardner, and I am the farm manager at Sylvester Manor. We hoped, the goal would be to have enough compost to then redistribute to the community. That will take several years of
To get going.
to get going. Right now, we are building 2 really, really large compost piles, and the addition of anyone in the community would be amazing. The other goal is to have it be year-round so that people can not just drop off during the summer months, but be able to, divert food waste on a year-round basis, so.
Okay, I have another question.
Yes.
Kind of, if I may. Just because I've encountered this at home. Vermin,
Yes,
because I'm envisioning a big mound.
where in your,
No, when you
For us.
yeah.
yes, so we did have that problem at Sylvester Manor previously. We were building the compost pile behind our greenhouse, and we had a massive rat problem that was not good for anything on the farm and the crops. So we have since moved the compost pile that has any fresh food scraps to a different area on the property near to our pole barn on the opposite side,
Yeah.
where there's no risk of rats. Like, maybe they would bother our chickens a little bit, but the chickens are tough. So it's completely removed off-site, off the farm, so it won't affect
The food production, yeah.
or the health of like humans having rat droppings everywhere. Like,
Yeah.
not a good thing to have your workers in a greenhouse with
Right,
type of environment. So we moved it away.
okay.
Good point.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're gonna bring the rat czar out from New York City.
So I have that, we'll put a resolution to approve this on the next board meeting, which is August 8th. So we will be giving you permission to go ahead and buy the things, and on the 8th, we'll pass the official resolution.
So this is a go?
Yes.
For 100,
$1,000,
100, right? Yeah.
$1,145.
One other question.
Come on, yep.
Tim Pertel, Chair of Green Options Committee. Can Sylvester,
not to get the cart ahead of the horse, should they wait till this is actually passed to order the items? And the reason I ask is because the Green Expo is coming up on the 26th, and we wanted to have them available at that event to.
Well, I think you have 4 of the 5.
Yeah.
Yes.
How more got
Yes.
also proceed.
Yes,
You can,
Tim,
We
yes.
just can't reimburse sort of the, you know, we can't pay for it until after the,
Until after the fact.
but the order
All right,
And you know, in ordering them, no sales tax.
correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, correct, okay.
They're nonprofit.
yeah, they would
Yeah.
be nice to have at the Green Expo.
No, it's a great start.
It is,
Yes.
yes, most definitely.
So, yes,
We need to present you with.
not up to Mike again.
Do we need to present you with receipts?
The invoice.
And who should I send that to? Just.
Town clerk.
I will see that.
Yeah.
Salute, that was.
It's a voucher.
Hollywood salute, actually.
Sure.
Yeah.
You'll help her with the voucher and all that, yeah, thank you.
great.
All right.
All right, good, okay.
Yay.
So Christina, you were able to load that up to the website, and then did we get copies for people in the room? I see you, Julia, hold on a second. All right, so you are getting, Christina's gonna make copies for people in the room. Julia, you have a
Yeah,
question?
just before Tim leaves, I think he's walking out the door.
He's walking out the door.
Rats, okay. It had to do with what the drop-off of this compost will be. Last time they did this, it was only during the CSA on Saturdays, and you had to wait and you had to get it weighed. So I'm wondering what the.
We're gonna try to grab.
He's not out the door.
guys go back.
There was a question.
There's a follow-up question.
Yeah, Julia saw you leaving, and
Hi,
so.
Tim, sorry about that.
Or Ariel, maybe Ariel.
For Tim or Ariel.
Yeah, so the question is what are the hours for dropping off the compost?
That's a great question. I was just sitting here thinking about that. Right now, for the remainder of summer, it will be every Saturday from 9 until 4, which we think is a good window and allows us to have someone on staff to weigh the compost, which is a big part of what we do, and we want to be able to quantify the amount that we're diverting from the town, separate from our own program. And then those hours will change in the winter when I am available. But for now, until at least November, it will be every Saturday from 9 until 4 p.m.
When will this process begin?
As soon as the buckets arrive, we will just begin distributing them at the farmer's market. And unless anyone believes that there's a different location, we would entertain having them be able to be picked up at another spot. That was just one idea that we thought the community might enjoy.
Farmers market's a really good idea.
Okay.
And green options fair is another really good idea.
See if Reed is available to come in just for this little.
Maybe landfill too, you know.
At the dump.
Yeah, and it couldn't go landfill, it's a transfer station.
So would I ask, who would we ask there?
Brian
Sherman.
He's on the website for an email if you want, or a phone call.
And does it say, would like to offer these if people would like to pick them up?
Yes.
I think after green options, after CSA season, maybe in September if you have any left.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
Sounds like a good.
Because I feel like someone
Town
had to
clerk's
man it. and
Town
be like,
clerk's office,
This is
too.
what they are, this is what it's
Yeah.
for, you need to explain it, I think, to the general public.
Maybe town clerk's office is easier, the recycling.
Come in.
She could keep a few to give out if
Yeah.
there are any left.
Absolutely, I think that would be a better place, but I don't also like want to put piles of buckets, you know.
I'll find a spot.
As long as they're clean.
They will be initially, and then we'll keep them.
Are you registering, like who's getting buckets? Is that like part of your?
I don't believe we will. I think it will just be an open-ended whomever.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking in terms of paperwork.
Yeah.
Work for town clerk's office.
The only thing we'll report is the quantity, and we can happily share that with you weekly or monthly.
Maybe,
Like here.
maybe, oh, right. Maybe weighing could become a self-serve thing over time.
We would hope in the winter
Yeah.
that it might be.
So you can get away when you need to.
We're getting cows, so I'll be here.
Yeah, oh, fun.
Okay.
Like it.
All right.
So
Maybe-
you were waiting for Reed, so why don't we
Yeah, I
go to
just think it's
smoking
good to have him
Yes.
in the room
Yeah, he
as we're
can
going
take
through
it.
these, so you want to go to the
Okay, we'll
smoking?
go to number 3, smoking on town properties. And
Oh, yeah.
so,
He
didn't answer.
Okay, so we'll go smoking and just see if he comes in the next 10 to 15 minutes. It'll take us that much time to get through that.
okay. All right, so smoking on town properties, we currently have regulations that state no smoking at Crescent Beach and Wade's Beach. Because those are 2 family-friendly beaches. The smoking, it was instituted because of the change in marijuana laws. And so we wanted to have a place where we had to ban all smoking because if someone wanted to smoke marijuana, we wanted to maintain those as family-friendly beaches. So that's what's existing, but now it's been suggested that.
Well, Taylor's Island came,
Mhm.
right, first,
I think
and asked us to prohibit it on Taylor's Island because
Right.
it's an old wood building.
Yeah, I have a few notes on this. Last year, on June 13th, 2022, Governor Hochul signed a legislation prohibiting smoking in all state-owned beaches, boardwalks, marinas, playgrounds, recreation centers, and group camps. It's a civil fine of $50 if you violate that. The bill exempts the Adirondacks and Catskills from the ban, as well as parking lots, sidewalks, which adjoin parks, and areas not used for park purposes. But all the other things are included. I'm proud to sign this legislation, which will protect New Yorkers' health and help reduce litter in public parks and beaches across the state. Many municipalities and local governments have already restrictions and bans on smoking in public areas. In addition, the health risk posed by secondhand smoke and cigarette butts are a major environmental hazard. The non-biodegradable filters, when they are discarded, they are the leading item found during beach cleanups. The state senator, New York's public parks are family-friendly venues. No one, especially children, should be subjected to secondhand smoke. And I don't think outside secondhand smoke is the big deal. I think it's the idea of smoking in family areas in front of children that I think it's more of that message. I mean, the butts, the fire hazards, and all the other things that go along with it, as opposed to secondhand smoke. New Yorkers head to our parks for fresh air and foster a healthy lifestyle, so says another one. So I mean, it also, on another piece of legislation that talks about historic areas, such as Taylor's Island. And basically, for Long Island region, it goes by region, this bill. So region-wide on Long Island, which is impacted currently, right now, all sandy beach areas, boardwalks, all developed playing fields, pavilions, and shelters. All swimming pool complexes, that would be a village swimming pool, not a private pool, obviously. All playgrounds, tennis courts, and within 50 feet of any playground or tennis court. Within 50 feet of all picnic pavilions, within 50 feet of all building entrances and exits. Such here, if you wanted to go out and have a swim, you'd have to go 50 feet away from the town building. Within 50 feet of all gas station complexes. And that basically covers the Long Island area. They have separate things for Jones Beach, Robin Moses, planting fields all around. You know, they have some other criteria, but universal Long Island wide, it is covering those areas. I would like to support that. I don't think we should allow smoking at all for a variety of reasons on Taylor's Island. I don't think they belong at smoking belongs at Wade's Beach or at Crescent Beach as well. I think you have to be 50 feet away from the beach to have a cigarette. You have to remove yourself from the beach. You went out to the road. If you went out to the road, had a cigarette, that'd be a different story. But I don't think we should, and it's becoming an issue down at the beach with cigarette butts. I just don't think it's the place for smoking at those kind of venues. The school, since the school owns really the basketball courts, the pickleball courts, the tennis courts, that's their business. That's not town property. I think the school has a policy, however, that they don't allow smoking smoking on school grounds,
It's state ed policy.
period. So I would assume that those areas would be covered by that. But as a former health education teacher, a person who really kind of did a 180 on this topic, for all you guys that were in school in the early 1970s when I broke into teaching, and I took over student government, we had smoking lounges in high schools for juniors and seniors, and a smoking lounge, usually with a ping pong table, pool table, and some lounge chairs where seniors could go and, have a cigarette. Teachers had smoking lounges in the faculty lounge. So things changed dramatically. In fact, I was responsible for changing that in the faculty lounge because you'd walk in there at lunchtime to have your lunch and talk about secondhand smoke. It was ridiculous. You would gag on it. And as a non-smoker, we actually divided, we put a wall divided it into the smoking lounge for teachers and the non-smoking lounge. And the non-smoking lounge became 90% of the faculty as less and less faculty members smoked. And eventually we eliminated smoking from the faculty lounges. So I think staying up with the times is important. Like smoking is the kind of thing that, you're entitled to. CPF properties would be,
That's town owned.
well, it is town owned. I mean, the biggest fear there would be fire.
And
And the butts, yeah.
But going back to what you read, so
Yeah.
this is state law?
It's the state.
Yeah, it's
property.
state.
Oh, it's only state property, so it
properties,
doesn't,
yeah.
okay, I
It doesn't-
wasn't
Yeah, it
sure
covers
when
state
you got to the
properties.
back page, okay.
Yeah, it covers state property.
What we can do is, we can change 116-3, which says smoking to include burning or vaping of any material, including but not limited to tobacco, hemp, and marijuana, shall be prohibited at all times, and instead of having a laundry list, at any town, beach, park, as defined in section 36-9, and any other town property, or within 50 feet therefrom. And then that would be a catch-all. And the definition in section 36 speaks to, the definition of park includes CPF properties.
Okay,
I like it broad.
I like it, bro, too. I do.
And then the second portion of that, this whole concept of the smoking on town properties is that it's already on the books that you're not allowed to smoke at Crescent and Wade's Beach, but there's no signage letting people know that.
Right.
And so the whole reason this came up was two reasons.
point.
Taylor's Island made the request, and then the other one was that we had Highway come to us and say, look, we have a big problem with people smoking in the pavilions and, putting butts out on the pavilion and just leaving a big pile on the ground. And it's becoming a real problem because they're just haphazardly leaving it everywhere, and it's a lot to clean up. And it's destroying the property. They've had to sand it down and refinish it a few times. So just small signs, just the universal no smoking sign, maybe on the railing at Crescent on the way down to the
Yeah.
beach, just next to the entrances, and maybe on the pavilion, just so people see this is a no smoking area. Because without the signage, then there's no way to really enforce, because there's nothing notifying people that you're not allowed to do that here.
Right.
The next question, and that's great points, excellent points of good rationale of why to do this. Because it is costing us a lot of time, extra time to clean up these areas and refinish these things. It's more than just the look of it. It's the manpower to do this. Can we get a resolution for next Tuesday?
We would have to just
Just to
let
be able to-
law, so we have to set the
Set a
public
hearing.
hearing.
All right, okay,
We can notice it
okay,
for.
yeah. I mean, we'll miss it.
Yes,
Okay,
And could Christina Christina, you also let Brian know about this, that we want the signage, yeah.
Right, so Amber will set the public hearing. Christina, could you give Reed a copy of this, since we're gonna go through point by point?
A quick question though, did we want it 50 feet from to the boundaries of beaches and parks? Or
Yeah,
just limited to the beaches and parks,
Oh.
or 50 feet away?
so you could stand on the sidewalk and put your butt out there. For me, it's the pollution thing.
up to you guys.
But the sidewalk, but then it's gonna just be in the street,
Yeah,
so, I
yeah,
mean,
50 feet.
I guess it's easier to clean it if it's in the street.
Right, right.
And we could propose it as is and we'll have a
Yeah,
public hearing on it.
Okay, how about that? Yeah, see if anybody has a,
I feel like it's,
you.
yeah. want to go too far.
Yeah. People who need nicotine can be fierce.
Right.
Having been one.
Let's step it. All right, so got that one, and then back to water conservation measures.
All right, so we're
Reed, you may want to, we're probably going to ask you to
Let's-
chime in here and there.
waiting for it to post up here.
I'm sure, you want me up there?
Yeah, you can sit up on the
Yeah, I
table.
want to get up on the
Oh,
screen.
okay, you want Christina to share it on the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, if you want to have a seat at the table, that way you don't have to stand there
They
the
don't
whole
have to
time.
stand there.
Yeah, because, so we started to go through it, and the first number one on the list, which is use of water sensor fixtures. State plumbing code was. We wanted to-
2020 adopted the EPA water sense standards for residential plumbing fixtures. Do we enforce that on all new homes now or major renovations? That was the question.
We should.
Lex,
Right, no, I was unfamiliar with this section of the, new code. And I think all of us were.
Yeah.
Uh,
to
But
me, it's,
there'd be no, and you'll take, you'll have to review it and all of that and come back to us with recommendations. But it seems to me on the face of it, there would be no reason for us to put that in our own code.
Well, if it's in the state code, there's no point in,
Yeah.
it just becomes makes the local code more cumbersome. There were about 20,000 changes to the code and.
I think it's highly recommended and easy to implement. I think it's a 1, as long as we include it in any new applications, new building permits. Won't go back and try to resurrect this with.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but the New York State building code is what the inspectors have to use when they inspect all the new construction. So any new construction should have to fall under this New York State code. So their plumbing should all have to meet that
We've
water
already-
sense standard.
We've already adopted this
Yeah.
Oh,
by
yeah.
adopting the uniform code.
Right.
So it's
I mean,
adopted.
In theory, I would think that if this was adopted by the state code, usually with stuff like this where it's a mechanical component, you're not allowed to sell it in New York State. So, therefore, unless they're buying it in Wyoming and shipping it over because they deliberately avoid this code, then that's the kind of thing we spend a lot of our time enforcing because you kind of have to.
Okay. Can we all agree that it's easy to implement? It's 1, it's done? Okay.
We don't have to do anything.
All right, beyond that water sense certified sprinklers on all irrigation systems, existing irrigation systems, not new irrigation systems, can that be brought up to snuff, or is that something that needs more discussion, or needs to be phased in, or do a majority of the existing sprinkler systems have this currently?
Well, I think we need to go over the irrigation code in general
Okay.
because we need to wrap up the sundowning of the well-drawn irrigation, and we can do this at the same time as that.
Okay,
So I think this should be wrapped into an overall review of the irrigation.
okay, makes sense.
Do we want to just get that on a work session calendar? A review of the irrigation code? Reed can come with his comments.
I know Mary Ellen had a bunch of comments.
Yeah.
Maybe if we,
Like have their own internal working group.
Yes.
Okay.
yes,
All right,
To the town board.
correct.
okay.
Okay, what are your feelings on number 2, Reed? We have Joe on the line too. Joe, if you want to chime in on any of this as town engineer, please feel free. Use of Energy Star appliances. Currently not New York State Energy Code requirement, but recognized as best practice by water experts. Implement in both the nearshore area and across the island, or what are your feelings? I'd like to hear from both of you, from Joe and from Reed on this.
I'd have to look into it. I've heard from people who are practical, pro-environment, but practical, that the Energy Star certification is not necessarily,
Accurate.
it's a little, it's potentially kind of a feel-good thing. I don't know, though. I mean, it may be that that's a totally incorrect view, but I don't, with a lot of this stuff, I would really have to look into it without doing some research. I don't know whether it's helpful or just feel good.
Joe, you have some feelings on this?
I think conceptually, this is a great approach. What I think the harder question for the board to contemplate is whether this is really effective at, cutting water usage. Really, it's, it's these accessory uses that we're seeing as part of new construction plans that can drive up water use, pools, saunas, plunge pools and decks and things, that's where we're seeing significant usage of water, sometimes in water challenged areas. And I would certainly support implementation of these, Energy Star programs or WaterSense certified appliances and whatnot. But I just want to make sure we're not chasing, diminishing returns here, whereas we could potentially be, focusing more on the low hanging fruit for large water use.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, I think, sometimes more valuable to look at the elephant in the room, not pick at little things. I think that, there's serious issues with irrigation in general. And, if you look at where we've had these leaks with irrigation systems in the wintertime that haven't been turned off, or situations like that, where you lose hundreds of thousands of gallons, as opposed to,
Dishwasher.
doing something that's going to require more enforcement and isn't really going to net. I think you have to be just careful where the resources goes, I guess.
How do you want to proceed on this, guys? Yes.
Greg?
Oh, by the way, as you come up to the podium, I want to say these weren't just plucked out of the thin air. So this is stuff that Mike B. Bound came up with the WAC back 3 years ago or 4 years ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago.
From the surface water management.
Yes, exactly. And that's where we resurrected these from. I just saw them sitting there saying, we haven't acted on them. Same thing with the drought. And before I leave office, I like to be able to get through this and say, are we prepared to move forward with some of these things?
Just, Greg Turner, my suggestion was going to be the word appliances would be, like my water pick doesn't waste a lot of water. So it might be good to put what types of appliances you're talking about. Water heaters and whatever it may be. So that was my problem.
Well, I think part of that is we don't have jurisdiction over appliances like that. We would have, in other words, the building department would only have jurisdiction over appliances that are regulated by the Uniform Code.
I was, the water pick thing.
Right.
Well, my take on this one is it needs more research because enforcement versus actual efficiencies achieved isn't worth it.
Give it a 2.
The cost benefit.
Okay, agreed. Number 3, installation of FlowLogic or similar devices to automatically shut off water in the event of a leak. So getting back to your comment right here. And it says, by the way, and I looked this up, Water Research Council studies indicate up to 70% of residential water usage is due to leaks. 17%, that's pretty significant. It's not, 0.7%. 17%, it's almost a fifth of the water.
Well, the only thing that I would say is that I think that the FlowLogic, the way they work is for a major leak, whereas I suspect that 17% of water usage is minor leaks that wouldn't affect the water logic, like a drip or something. And I don't think those are necessarily congruent, would be my suspicion, right?
I think that on newer home applications where it's probably a seasonal home and it may be left for the winter and there's that risk of freezing, pipes bursting, then something like this would be a very good addition to, to a home.
Yeah.
So you're talking,
I think it's actually a good idea. I just don't know that that statistic relates to it, is what I'm saying.
all right.
So, I think that could be.
So can it be mandated on new construction, but then recommended on seasonal people? That's a great suggestion. You leave,
I think it can also go into kind of educational materials on what homeowners can do to
Okay.
help conserve water in their home or help reduce the risk of burst pipes causing problems and things like that. So that can kind of go into
all right.
an educational document that maybe.
Green options, are they?
I was thinking WAC was working on something, but maybe it was.
Tim, are you working on a homeowner's guide to responsible living on Shelter Island, or?
That was CAC.
No,
Oh, okay.
That was, yes,
CAC.
CAC has one, and then WAC was doing something about water conservation. So we'll figure out which group is doing that, and this can be part of the educational piece.
And that's something that would have an effect, like if you look at Scudder, the leak at Scudder where they lost, close to 1 million gallons of water in a very short period of time. If they'd had that,
Right.
it would have obviated that whole, it would, yeah.
Are you recommending a 2-year?
Yeah.
Yes, Amber?
Well, it's also, it's easy to implement. We'll give it to the committee that's working on that. They can incorporate it.
Okay. Requiring a landscape plan that supports the use of native plants and grasses. This is almost always recommended by the CAC upon reviewing wetlands applications. Best practice note, CAC has developed a list of native plants and grasses on its website. See the town of Shelter Island committees. Implementation should be across the Shelter Island, not just in the nearshore area, but this is what they would like to see. They would like to see, as homes are going up or major renovations are occurring, that there is a landscape plan that supports native plants and grasses. They make that recommendation on every single application, pretty much that.
So if we're doing it,
Come on up.
but if we're doing it already, if we're saying, here's your permit, now we say, we want a landscape plan and we're gonna check it afterwards. I think that's something that we did with the last change.
Yeah, we're doing that planning.
So maybe this is accomplished.
Well, there's a difference between recommended and require,
Yeah,
just to be clear.
yeah.
No, but
This just says recommend, it doesn't say require.
Well, this says, number 4 says requiring a landscape plan.
I'm sorry.
So this is not recommending, this is requiring it on all.
Oh, I see.
New
I
homes.
was looking down, implementation, recommend across all Shelter Island.
Yeah.
Now, when you say recommend across all Shelter Island, you're saying whether you're waterfront or not waterfront.
Correct, not just in
Every
nearshore.
development of a vacant lot.
Correct.
or
Correct.
renovation or.
Correct. They make that recommendation on, it doesn't matter where it's located. It seems to get more attention, in a nearshore area, if it's in a wetlands area, but they do make that recommendation, by and large. It is a mindset that the Southwest of the United States is adopting, Southern California is adopting. They're trying to stay up with the changing environment and weather patterns to say that it's a losing battle if we continue to plant what we plant. So you need to plant grasses and plants that are resistant to higher temperatures, droughts, and things of that nature.
So it's not just native. It's actually, you're saying something more here. You're saying drought resistant, native drought resistant plants, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there are non-native drought resistant plants, and if they're not invasive, they're not bad.
Yeah, that's true.
But to me, we have to develop the trigger, because when you're saying the CAC always recommends it, it's in connection with some ask, like whether it's wetlands, or, a subdivision, something. But for a plain vanilla vacant lot that they could build as a right of house, what is the trigger for requiring them, and what type and where and how much and this?
Enforcement, who's
The
gonna.
thing I was going to say is the enforcement's going to be very, very difficult.
Correct, unless
You'd have to hire someone
we'd have to have an
who knows.
in-house
Right.
Yeah,
environment.
you'd have to hire a body.
Well, because again, I think what we passed earlier was, the homeowner,
Right.
has to hire somebody to certify that this plan was followed. whoever that might be. Am I right about that?
What we did was through the planning board.
Yes.
For wetlands applications with the vegetative buffer.
Yeah.
Or with any type of revegetation, then what they're requesting is a site plan of that vegetation, vegetation plan, and then they're having it certified.
Yeah.
So the applicant is paying for the town's guy to go out and say, yes, you installed that new vegetative buffer or those plantings or whatever you presented to us correctly.
Mhm.
Now we'll sign off and you can get your CFO, you can close your permit.
Mm.
So that has the appropriate mechanism for handling something like this. And it handles it in the sensitive areas like the wetlands and, so the near shore. So we kind of have this portion covered in that.
The only
And do we need-
problem with that is that it's one snapshot in time. So
Well,
when, they'll have it done and then future enforcement, would entail expertise outside what we have currently.
and
So if they do plant it and then in a week later take it all down and put lawn,
I don't know how much,
Yeah,
how much we can, if you want to be such a judicial,
Correct. A what?
there's
can
no,
you define?
there's no hope for
I
it.
think it should, I favor, if it's in a wetlands area, a near shore area, it should be a requirement.
Right, which is, it is,
Which it is, which I think
I think.
in terms of the enforcement piece, I think, after 8 years of sitting up in here, obviously, we pass things, and they have to be enforceable. And if that means beefing up the building department, and putting, again, a lot of that, what I just said, and what BJ has just said, a lot of the onus could go back on the homeowner, that they have to do this with their builder and their contractors, they have to make sure that this is done. It's more of a checklist item.
I would just point out this for houses in the center, this would be an extraordinarily expensive addition to a project.
Okay, all right.
I mean,
And I don't know that it's necessary. We don't have a quantity issue
So
so much in this.
if we target just the wetlands applications,
Well, I think
Yeah, which is pretty much done.
I feel like this is completed. This is a done deal.
Okay.
I just want to add trees.
Trees.
When people clear properties, trees actually do a lot to absorb that runoff. Another things I noticed when you clear a property, it's like almost like a first harm approach to a property. A lot of properties may have invasive plants on them, which have to get cleared out, and I understand you need to create a building envelope and access and all of that. But in some case, you actually can find properties that are actually quite pristine in terms of the vegetation, and all of that gets destroyed and replaced by a lawn. So I don't know how I think education would go a long way towards doing that. And actually Howard Johansson and I have been talking recently about how we can sort of do better with education for property.
We are
You also
also,
need the hammer. Because education falls on deaf ears a lot. So,
I understand the limits of education.
yeah, so I think we need to discuss potentially local law regarding clearing and clearing limits. And
comp plan proposal, adopt a tree preservation local law for the purposes of protecting woodlands, individual historic, significant scenic trees, important to the community, and then there's a list of a whole of further actions that we should be taking. I think you wrote that.
no, but there's also, we can adopt zoning overlay districts where you could have things, and basically before they can clear it to develop, they have to come on with a plan. They're gonna preserve this amount of, mature trees, and this is where the building envelope is. That's something that could be explored.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you, Tim.
so in part, this is done, and in part, it needs additional work, right?
The tree aspect, yes.
Clearing, yeah,
The clearing, the land clearing, yeah.
the land clearing, yeah. All right, well pump recommendations, we've talked about this before, adopt a maximum of 5 gallons permitted limitation to designated areas in the near shore, such as Silver Beach Community and other like communities, where thickness of the freshwater lens is less than 15 feet. And that came from Joe, recommended by Joe. So you want to, because you were then using the analogy of, or the comparison with Wade's Beach, where some of those communities are pretty close to the water, but the lens is so much thicker in Wade's than it is in Silver Beach. So you wanted to have that 15-foot. If it's less than 15 feet, you wanted to see this recommendation put in place, no?
Yes, I don't know where the 15 specifically came from. I guess that was referenced from the surface water management plan, but I think I'd like to maintain a little flexibility on reviewing that before it's formally recommended. But in concept, yes, we have a habit now of just deferring to these low flow pumps in places where it's not necessary. And by extension, I'd like to see that approach taken for site plans that are considering a significant accessory uses for water. And there are certain areas that just generally don't support what we allow as maximum, development or build out now. And there are other areas where we restrict it that really can support it. So that's the concept I'd like to take in terms of these site plan reviews, and certainly in terms of these water withdrawal reviews.
All right, so accessory structures you want to see included in this, and where necessary.
Not just structures, but like swimming pools, things that are high water usage, things that people may not get a tanker in to top off, but they might put a hose in. I think that's more what Joe's referring to.
Yeah, we've had I think we've done a great job as a township with the irrigation law, but unbeknownst, I think, to the original thinkers of that program, was that we would begin to outsource so much of our water, and that's an unsustainable approach that we should be rethinking at the planning levels for these applications. Where the trends have become quite clear as to what people are looking to build, and the uses they plan to have on their structures. And an overall reliance on trucked in water, I think, is bad policy for the town. And that's kind of what we offer now, carte blanche for these applications. If you're going to put in a pool or a dock, you name it, we just say you have to truck in the water. And I don't think that's a good approach, from a number of angles.
All right, so what I hear people saying, it's a 2 because it's recommended, but it needs a little bit further refinement.
Yes.
Okay. Number 6, use of water storage tanks. Joe recommended that we do not have to qualify this initiative with the size of a new or major renovated home. Rather, the use of water storage tanks should be based on the fixture loading and other demands that is being designed for that structure. These calculations to be determined and should be required in the design calculations to be submitted as part of the building permit process. It will result in a direct benefit to the homeowner. Joe, those are kind of your words. Hopefully I got that correct. Any other comments on that from you?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, this is for the structured drinking water system. When we have imposed limited pump output, there's also an associated storage tank so that a low flow pump can meet the demands of the house. And I just don't think we don't need to be in the business of mandating a certain amount of storage. That's for the homeowner and the designer to settle on based on their needs.
Okay, so this number 6 item is essentially tied to the low flow well. So if you have a low flow well, you need a storage tank for potable water. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, and I don't know that we need to mandate that. That's just something we don't need to have any restrictions on. If somebody wants 200 gallons of storage or 800 gallons, it doesn't really matter.
Jerry's comment, more important to recapture runoff. Homeowners use weed killer on walkways and driveways now. Obviously, we would like to get away from that kind of stuff, but Joe, currently there is no requirement for walkways and patios, correct?
There are some in the nearshore overlay, and and some of that language is due for revisiting as well.
Yeah, we had a question come up in the comprehensive plan because as it currently stands, you are not allowed to have an impermeable driveway in the nearshore overlay. It has to be permeable. But then there was a concern that that led to a higher herbicide, pesticide, and fungicide usage in driveways to keep the grasses from growing in them. So then there was the thought that, well, it may be better if they have a impervious driveway with appropriate like runoff capture, so that you're not necessarily having, runoff issues, you're capturing and recharging, but then maybe you're not encouraging the use of herbicides and pesticides in the near shore. So that kind of came up for debate. And it's kind of,
I support that approach, Meg. I think that's exactly the concept we're trying to promote. You could have a 1 acre lot that's paved parking facility, all asphalt, and capture every single ounce of water that drops on it. So the need for impervious surfaces, I think, is not necessary so long as the water's captured.
All right, so we need to revisit that.
so I would give that one a 3.
I just one thing about pesticides. Is that there are formulas that are not glyphosate that can be used. And again, going back to education, there are other alternatives to Roundup and stuff like that.
Not everybody uses those, unfortunately. That's the problem.
I know, but again, it's just getting the word out.
Yeah.
With the new education system.
Should be good.
But what we need to do is get a driveway that has a problem with vegetation and stuff, weeds growing through the pervious driveway. Treat it with a non-chemical substance, with a homemade remedy kind of thing that works. Take the before and after picture, put it on the front page of, ask to have it on the front page of the Reporter, and demonstrate to people very clearly that there are other products out there. And by the way, if you don't like, here are 4 more products that are also non-chemical that can have the same results. I think pictures are worth 1,000 words sometimes. And a before and after shot, I think, didn't Jerry do that?
Jerry just recently.
He did that.
Like vinegar and stuff.
Yeah, with vinegar or something. So I think there are ways to do this. People just are not aware of that. They walk into a hardware store, they see Roundup, and say, great, they grab Roundup right away. As it is, I think Ace Hardware does not sell Roundup anymore.
Correct.
But there's other products in there that are not Roundup, but they also are probably not ideal for the environment, that's for sure.
We also need to educate the landscapers, because
Yes.
a lot of people aren't doing their own driveway.
Yes, that's
You know,
true.
They're hiring somebody to do it.
Okay. So that's part of number 3. That's a good point, landscaper education. And the alternatives, which makes, that's a good point as well. Order 8, automatic pool cover or limits on pool size. I think pool size is a much difficult. Again, not length and width, but gallons. I talked to Darren about this very briefly. He said, no, I think it would be better off if you went with the gallons. Jerry says, no on maximum pool size, but he agrees that pool covers, that if you're putting in a new pool, it should be rectangular in shape somehow. Kidney-shaped pools do not support pool covers. Pool covers do help in terms of loss of evaporation of water and chemicals and things of that nature. So we pretty much recommend that as a CAC every time there's a pool in an application. We always talk about, pool cover, and then most of the time they are rectangular shape, and most of the time, not all the time, the person volunteers to do that. I will tell you that the pool cover, it was about $14,000-15,000. So it's not a cheap thing, but if you're gonna have a pool for 20, 30 years, it does pay more than pay for itself. And obviously you can get in a pool earlier in the season, swim later in the season because the water stays warmer with a pool cover on it, less chemical, less cleaning. There's all kinds of positive things by having a pool cover. Last night when it was about to rain, go out, you hit a button, pool cover comes on, you let it rain, you close it back up. But you just get an extra quarter of an inch, half inch of water in your pool. Do it every time. Look at the weather forecast. The rain's gonna hit at 3:00 in the morning, take the pool cover off at night, let it rain into the pool. And if we get a good downpour, it's a significant difference. You can see it the next day. So I think this is, to me, it's a one on new pools. Again, I don't, the size of pools doesn't seem to be a huge issue. So I would just think that we should mandate that. Okay, installation of cisterns. If you really want to get serious about collecting and using rainwater, you can install a larger tank or cistern that holds several hundred gallons of water and uses a small pump to distribute the water in the yard and the garden. You will be able to store more water during the rainy season and will be available during periods of low rainfall. That was the comments that are there.
I think this will end up tying into a revamping of the irrigation code.
Okay.
Because another thing I would like to see on, especially like the larger properties that are in the near shore that may not have ample water is if they have a cistern, also have a fire department hook up to that cistern. Because that's one of the concerns the fire department expressed was an inability to get to the water anymore because of all the hedging and closing off some of their access points. So I think that when we look at cisterns and we look at irrigation, we need to look at some other possible needs for those cisterns in some places.
Yeah, Jerry's comment, all cisterns should be retrofitted to capture rainwater on the property.
Right. Like roof runoff.
All grandfathered irrigation systems should connect to cisterns or be abandoned. So Megs, I think we're talking about a 2 here. Because if you're going to tie it in with the irrigation code, it needs a little bit further refinement. Okay. Is that all right with everybody or no? Okay. Item number 10, installation of water meters that can be read electronically on structures or cisterns. These PD meters, the positive displacement meters, are mainly used in residential and small commercial settings. They are very accurate when the flow is low to medium. This type of mechanical water meter has a measuring element that is displaced in direct proportion to the volume of water that passes through. Jerry's comment, use on cisterns only. Don't see the value in using this on residences. More businesses, type of thing. His comment.
So WAC actually looked into this last year. I think it was last year, because, they saw there could be benefit to metering people's water so everybody knew what usage was and that kind of thing. And it turned out to be very, very complicated, was kind of what they determined. And we can go back to WAC and ask them if they could just give us kind of a summary of their findings. But it seemed like it would have been a very big lift to get everybody on a meter from a private well. It's one thing if you're on a public water supply, then it's easily done. It's kind of part of your infrastructure. But to have all the private residences metered using the same meter that could be read is a challenge. So it kind of seemed impractical when they looked at it.
My comment on this one too is, we're collecting data, but what are we going to do with the data?
Okay.
Well, it imposes a cost and time that we just don't.
Do you want to give it a 3? Okay. And the last one, number 11, requiring groundwater monitoring prior to new home construction. This has been something that's been looked at by past town boards, that prior to building a home and determining the size of a home, maybe it's a good idea that you go in and try to spend a little bit of money on the property after you purchase the property to find out maybe before you purchase the property might be a better idea. Find out what you're sitting on in terms of a lens, fresh water, how thick is it? What's the quality of your water? That might largely determine the size of the home that you might want to build on that. It may have some correlation with, the size of homes. So I throw that out there for anybody to comment on.
I know that the health department does have test well requirements. So, for example, with community housing, before they'll approve an application, you have to do a test well and you have to have that water tested so they know what the quality of that water is. And that also gives them the depth of your well, how much water you have. So I know it's kind of standard practice for the health department to require a test well, and then that's usually converted to your well if it's a good test. Joe, do you have anything else for that?
Yeah, that would be my recommendation, is to connect this in tandem with the required water test for your well permit.
Yeah.
And to use that, information by extension for those other discussions we had about accessory water uses, and you'll get all that data from the test you need to do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're giving that a 2?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So did we have any ones?
Yeah, we
Pool
had the
covers?
automatic pool covering, we had the use of water sense certified, part of that we had as a 1.
It's happening in the beer.
Yeah, it's already happening, but reinforcing the New York State Plumbing Code. It was passed in 2020, adopting the EPA water sense standards for residential plumbing fixtures. So that's on all new homes and major renovations, not on it. Other than that, you have a whole bunch of 2s. The only benefit is it doesn't sound like we've, accomplished a hell of a lot, but you got to take these things off the back burner, put them on the front burner, and eventually pick them off. Even if you're picking off 1 or 2 of them at a time, you're making some progress, as opposed to just cashing it out and putting it in the back burner, and where it sits for months or years, like the drought status thing did. And I think it's twofold. Number one, it's not fair to the people that elected us that want us to do smart things about water. And number 2 is it's an insult to the committee, particularly the WAC, when they spend hours and hours and hours discussing these kinds of recommendations. They give them to the board and we just sit on them. And to me, it's a little bit irresponsible on our part to do this. We need to do this periodically, maybe every 6 months with water initiatives. It should be something that comes up once or twice a year, where you take a town board meeting, a work session, spend some time, see if you can fine tune some of these things and make them a reality. They're asking us to put our money where our mouth is. If water is important, we've got to demonstrate that, in fact, water is a valuable resource.
So I'd recommend, from what I'm hearing, 2 things from my end that help you achieve some of those goals. Is that we set up a irrigation working group, and
Yes, I agree.
I'm thinking maybe we can explore the model of the Aquifer Protection Overlay District regarding clearing.
Yes.
So we set up those 2 separate and distinct working groups to really dig into those. And maybe before your time is out here, we can get some amendments to our town code.
And some of these too, as we go through the large house moratorium legislation, taking a first pass look at some of the, how we can incorporate some of this into that before rolling it out to a larger, broader, to the entire public.
So did we want to pick 2 liaisons for each group, the irrigation and the clearing? I want to take the lead on that.
I have been on irrigation in the past, so I have some history on that as well. I'll sign up for that one.
And I think that the ladies with what they're doing in terms of what they're under with the comprehensive plan, which they're in every day working their face off, I will take the other one.
Okay, and then what about the clearing?
No, I'll take the clearing.
Jim will do.
Oh, okay.
I'll do clearing.
Okay, all right, so there'll only be one town board member on each.
Yeah.
And I think Jerry might jump in on
Yeah.
this too. So,
Okay.
all right, perfect.
All right.
That's it for agenda items, so we can go around the table with board member reports.
You want to start off? All right. Just one other thing. The Capital Planning and Grants Committee met this morning. Very quickly, Real Point, we've really have no movement on Real Point. I've asked Joe to keep in contact with the Army Corps of Engineers at least every other month. I'm particularly interested when they asked us to jump on some questions that they had about Real Point. Joe and I answered all four of those questions. The last question is ideally, what would you like to see at Real Point? We spelled that out for them. It supported what we found out in First Coastal Report, and we've heard nothing back. Now that's, again, it's not a year ago, but it's 6 months ago or 5 months ago. And I'm getting antsy about this. We've been working on Real Point since 2018. That's 5 years ago. And we need the Army Corps to become part of the solution. So I'm asking Joe, just Karen is our contact point at Army Corps. Stay on this. And are they going to do a separate study themselves? Are they going to take First Coastal study? And when, if they're going to do a feasibility study themselves, when might this happen? Fresh Pond, we're moving along very, very well. We talked about the signage last week about Fresh Pond, a window on the aquifer. I love the sign. I think the board was very excited about it. It was great in terms of awareness, education, and why this project is so important to the town. The signage provides a history of a 15-acre kettle pond, which is the largest body of water, fresh water on the island. And it has an impact on our water table. It has an impact on surrounding creeks and bays. So it's something that we are taking a great deal of pride in. We want to always thank the Fresh Pond Neighbors Association for all their hard work and leadership in trying to work in tandem with the town to get this done. One of the things that we're working on a design phase is in our final stages. One thing we were trying to do this year is get rid of the vegetative removal. The window of opportunity is closing on that, so that we only have a few weeks left that we can actually jump in there and be able to do this. The problem, the vendor is ready to go. The problem is we're waiting for the DEC to respond back. And so far, that's been a problem. We also applied for the grant. It's up to $1 million, $600,000 if current estimates maybe. We pay 25% of the matching grant. They pay 75%. So we've submitted that. The ADA project update for Shelter Island Police Department headquarters building is being wrapped up. Pam is currently working on finalizing those drawings, which actually spell out in much more detail exactly what has to be done to bring the accessibility of the public to get into police headquarters going. We also are involved with trying to work with the next thing. We would redirect Pam over to Justice Hall to try to work on. That's a much more complicated project because of the design of the building, the number of people that have to access that building. So that's a whole different thing. But we were trying to, since the two buildings lie side by side and are a similar age, we thought that cost-wise, it would be much more effective to be able to combine both projects together. So when Pam is finally finished with police headquarters, she'll be heading into Justice Hall. We've applied for a grant through the Community Block Grant. Want to thank Barbara for her work in helping us with that. And so hopefully we'll get monies to help us fund further look there. Municipal wastewater treatment project, that's on hold. West Neck Water comes in 3 phases. Phase 1 was the installation of the main, done. Phase 2, flushing of the system of the main, done. Phase 3, individual hookup to homes and businesses, done. They are currently working on a punch list of the final little items, but virtually that project is 98% completed. Every connection has been made to the new to the new main that runs down the streets there. Number 6, Shelter Island Heights Property Owner Corporation wastewater treatment plant. I met with Stella last week. We had a very good meeting in her office. We're taking a look at contacting I'm going to come up with a draft letter that I want to bounce off Stella. I want to bounce off Joe, basically the three of us and the town board. The town is only interested in staying in this project if we can get Bridge Street on board. Obviously, we can't mandate this, so therefore we need to sit down with the current people that own properties and businesses along Bridge Street and see what their take is on getting on board with this project. If we get a vast majority of those people wanting to be on board, we're going to pursue it. If we don't, we'll be out of that project. Item number 7 is this Shelter Island Community Center across the street. The sign has been, the sign is actually letters that are being put on a box that will be mounted on the roof of the center, which will basically say exactly what that building is. It will be the Shelter Island Community Center. That's the official name of the building. The Legion sign is separate on the side of the building for the downstairs. The major problem that we have there is Brian is finishing up a whole bunch of, obviously it's summertime, you got people out on vacation as well, but he's finishing up a whole bunch of minor projects. He just did some work over some of the buildings up the block here. So as soon as he gets that done, he's going to jump on getting the ramp up for the ADA ramp for the community center, so that if elections are held there, we can get people in wheelchairs and things like that easily in and out of that building. The last thing that has to be done is the door, which seems to be a major hookup problem with Riverhead Lumber. Hopefully that'll iron out sooner rather than later. Item number 8, Condon Dock update. This started February 2nd. Brian, for the 3rd time, issued paperwork to the DEC. On July 13th, he emailed DEC again. He's in constant phone conversation. Something is wrong with New York DEC. They're just not responding back. We've been promising those people down at Condon Dock that we would be on top of that project. We hope to be on top of that project this past spring. We are now planning to do it this fall. It's not going to happen unless the DEC cooperates and signs off on the permit to get that done. On New York Avenue walking path, we are committed to that project. I think Stella would be also, but that's going to be a spring 2024 project. It'll be done hopefully prior to Memorial Day next year. It'll be a path that will extend the length of New York Avenue, which will allow pedestrians, maybe bicyclists, to also use that path, but definitely pedestrians. On the new business, the capital plan, facility master plan, we've got that up and running. Shelter Island Country Club, that's all taken care of. We're doing a couple of projects up there. The tennis court, pickleball court, I did bring up, BJ was in here with Meg working for the last umpteen days on the comprehensive plan, and they overheard the conversation, and they asked me to put together something for the comprehensive plan. The amount of interest in pickleball, tennis, basketball, outdoor sports is growing by leaps and bounds. My goal simply is to take the 4 tennis courts and bring them back and make them 4 tennis courts. Take the pickleball and relocate it at another piece of property. I have engaged a little bit, very preliminary discussions with, and we need to talk about this more with the town board privately, with the school about Fisk Field and the basketball courts and the tennis courts, and maybe a shared responsibility. It's a big financial increase for us, but I will tell you that the demand for these lifetime sports is real. And if we are quadrupling our population in the summer, people need to get out and recreate. And we can't have people just sitting there waiting an hour and a half to get on a court. We've got to have some of these things available. 95% of the tennis courts on Shelter Island are privately owned. and we have tons of people. Chuck Kraus is sitting here, and he took over from Ken Peischer. There are 30 some odd people that this man provides tennis activity Monday, Wednesday, Friday on these courts. And we run tournaments. We'd like to run more. So obviously I feel strongly as a physical educator that we should have a community that embraces the outdoors, physical activity, and trying to stay in shape regardless of your age. And most of the people, the first thing I noticed when I got here at age 59 or 60, I'm playing tennis with 85-year-olds, and they're pretty good players, and they're in great shape. And I said, I want to become them. When I get to be 85, knock on wood, if I live that long. But so that's, I know I've hit hard on that, but it's something that I feel very, very strongly about. Lastly, Jen's report, I'll hit 3 items. The LiveScam grant for fingerprinting, the upgraded technology for police department, $24,100. That thing is being in the works. We have to submit a drinking water project for the extension of the New York State Water Infrastructure Improvement Grant by August 11th. I think the original date was July 21st, but they extended it to August 11th, so we plan on jumping on that. And the last one is the New York State DEC MWRR, the rolling deadline for the air burner and the walk-in trailer. That project needs to be finalized, and we're working on that as we speak. All right, that's pretty much, and Stephen, I think they told you that we need a resolution for the MLU, for the ferries, as soon as possible. Okay.
No, it's done.
Okay, it's done. Okay, so that's the extent of it. Thank you very much. Sorry for taking so much
On
time.
those grant applications, I just need to sit with you and make sure we've got all the resolutions that we need covered.
Okay, so let's see, what do I have? All right, first thing, we've officially closed accepting any more cards for water testing. We're closed, we're not gonna take any more applications to have your water tested. We've had 166 people respond, which is great, it's almost a 40% return. I'm going to be sending that list of people to Goldman Water Testing, and they will reach out to the homeowners to schedule the time for testing. So we're gonna get moving on that process. Testing will probably happen towards the end of August, because there's a lot of people they have to schedule. So yay, we're moving forward with that. So that request is also to me going to WQI now that we have a hard number on how many people have responded. So we'll be able to make that request, which is great. And it's been a nice dispersal through the triangle. So we're going to get some very good information from it, which is exciting. So that's moving forward. And then BJ and I visited the Shelterlands HOA meeting for comp plan on Saturday. And that was a good discussion, just kind of spread the word, how to participate, what to look forward to. There's going to be a lot of public sessions coming up in August and September. And that's pretty much it for me. Yeah.
Thursday, we went, did you go to the water thing?
No, I
Oh, you
wasn't
did,
there
right?
Thursday,
Yeah,
yes.
we had the water thing at the library, put on by the WAC. They do this series every summer where it's a once a month meeting just on various topics about water and Shelter Island and what people may or may not know. Just by living here through osmosis, this gives you a little more osmosis was intended. Come on, everybody. Andrew Chapman was a great, it was a great presentation, and it should be, I think we're going to post it on the website. And then on August, I just wanted to get the date, Meg and I are going to do the WAC meeting at the library, August 31st. And by then, we'll have a completed draft of the comp plan.
What time is that?
5 p.m.
5 p.m. And Meg and I hope to pull out of the comp plan sort of all the ways the comp plan is addressing water, surface and underground water. And so I think that would be quite interesting. That seems to be the leading concern. I mean, besides zoning, besides land use, besides transportation, water does seem to be the leading concern on Shelter Island when you're talking comp plan. So That, I don't know, maybe we'll make that available on Zoom. And see if we can get that meeting available on Zoom, because I think it would be interesting.
So that's Thursday, the 31st.
Yes, of August, yeah.
You can stick around with the vigil. It's at 7 o'clock.
That's right.
Same place, same
Right,
time.
Right, our drug awareness
Awareness, yes.
vigil.
It's our third annual.
Yeah. Bring your tissues. And I think that's all I have. I don't think there were any other meetings. It was a slow week for meetings.
Yeah. The only thing that I have is the New York State Legislative Commission is holding public hearings on the future of LIPA. So there's 4 of them. We'll get this posted on the website. They're in September, from September 12th through the 20th. One is on the East End at Southampton Town Hall. So that's September 20th at 11 a.m. So, but I'll have Christina put this up on Facebook too, probably now and then put it back up in early September. Stephen, anything else from you?
No.
Amber? Anyone in the in-person meeting from the public would like to speak? Looks like a no. Anybody on Zoom? Okay.
Julia Scott.
Hi, it's Julia at the Gazette. There was seemed like a recommendation earlier on having to do with no smoking, and it would be within 50 feet of, it wasn't clear to me, was this just beaches? Was this also public access, shoreline access points?
It was beaches and parks.
All town-owned properties, I thought. No? No?
Well, it can be as broad as you want.
Yeah.
So we can make it beaches, parks, 50 feet thereof, or also include municipal buildings, but like it's already no smoking on.
Yeah.
We can make it at every town-owned property, but again, that's something we can discuss during the public hearing process.
Okay.
Right, and the concern about that was that we have, 100 and I don't know, 40 or something like that, town access points to the shoreline, and every one of them is bordered by private properties, many of which have a house within 50 feet. And I wonder to what degree you are suggesting that there be public outlawing of smoking on private property.
No, it would not, it would be 50
It wouldn't
feet
impact.
from on public property.
Yeah.
So, meaning like a road right away.
So I live on a property out here on Silver Beach that's next door to a town landing, and you say you can't smoke on the town landing. Where does that 50-foot boundary end?
Where your property begins.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. And then there was also a recommendation that appeared to want to apply to the reliance on native plantings rather than just to wetlands, to the entire nearshore overlay. Did I read that correctly? Is that seriously under consideration? And what would the?
No, I think that ended up.
It's already incorporated.
It's
in
incorporated in the
wetlands.
wetlands applications, and we figured that's just the best place to keep it.
Okay.
Yeah, the only takeaway from that number 4 one was just looking at land clearing.
Yes.
And that I understood was there was going to be a committee, a working group that'll look at that. Thank you very much.
Okay, if there's no other public comments, we will go into executive session to discuss a potential.
Did you go to Zoom?
Yes, we did.
So one is to discuss potential CPF acquisition, and then the other one is employment history.
So moved.
Second.